Hello, and welcome to the Project Good podcast. I'm your host, Anne Marie Hilton. Project Good is a social impact podcast interviewing experts and advocates about the pressing problems that we face globally and hearing how they suggest we move forward in the future. The Project Good podcast is brought to you by Project Good Work. The goal of this podcast is to inspire people and organizations to develop a mindset that can move others to positive action regarding the complex social issues facing people and the planet. For January, we're focusing on creating community. Do you know your neighbor? If you existed before your cell phone was your best friend, you might remember going over to people's houses to see if they were home, to hang out instead of checking their Facebook. Maybe you hosted a regular neighborhood barbecue, spoke to your neighbors on the street about the yard that needed mending. These were the moments you looked forward to when you got home. Today, according to Brown University research fellow Mark Dunkelman in his book, The Vanishing Neighbor, the transformation of American communities have been replaced with networks in which people keep in touch with only their closest friends and family. Gone is the age of township. Instead, the common story today tends to be we don't know who lives next door to us, and we're not trying to get to know them. What if we could turn back the clock? Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Barry Braun, who is the founder of Happy Community Project and Happy Community Builders, who created these organizations because he believed his grandchildren would need the support of their community as our world continues to evolve. Throughout the pandemic, Happy Community Project and Happy Community Builders continue to lead the way in bringing people back together. Let's get into the interview. Loneliness has been on the rise before the pandemic, and it only became more apparent during these last few years amongst the teenagers and young adults as bouncing back from the pandemic and returning to normal has not been what people thought it would be. Across the country and around the world, people saw for the first time how important human connection was to their well-being. As we look towards an uncertain future, building community will be critical to our success. Leading the way to strong communities is Barry Vaughn, with his organizations, Happy Community Project and Happy Community Builders. With these organizations, he's been able to help people see the vital role of creating a neighborhood and getting people connected through volunteering, working together, and gathering to bring life to the world and to themselves. Welcome, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Hi.
so much, Marianne.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And that's a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
All right. No, thanks for taking your time today. So before we get into the interview, I always like to just ask people just random things, just to get them kind of comfortable and also to find out a little bit more about them. In my research and preparing for this interview, I saw that before you used to be an engineer, and I guess you still do a little bit of business consulting. I said, I guess, how did those two kind of, professions lead you to start community project and community builders, if at all, or you decided maybe to, start a new avenue?
That's nobody's asked me that one before. Thank you so much. So engineers are about problem solving. They're really good at solving problems, and business people are really good at figuring out processes that make stuff happen. And so when you put those two things together, or at least the way I figured it out, when you look at what is the real problem, getting a good definition of the problem, and I think you described it quite well, is the disintegration of the sense of community that we used to have, and how do you actually turn that around again? And do that in a way that adds process to doing it, then you can come up with a solution that might actually work. So that's how I approached it.
Okay, so very, it makes sense, I guess, from an engineer, methodically.
Sure.
Yes. So, as everybody in the whole world experienced the pandemic, and I think There were tons of takeaways, and I think that we're still unwrapping the takeaways every day from
Yeah,
this crisis or ongoing chaos, I'll call it. And so I think one of the things that we found out, and it was kind of I think there were two things that kept being said over and over that I was just like, I had enough of these sayings anymore, or are it's unprecedented and we're all in this together. Those were the two things I remember that were said like every day during the pandemic. And I guess,
ab-
some places are still in the pandemic, but those are the like taglines. And I was like, I can't take
absolutely.
it anymore. So, this, of course, we're going to look at we're all this in this together, because we're looking at the importance of community and what we have learned as humans a little bit more about ourselves because of these last few years. And so, what do you believe has really changed in the last? I would say, maybe 30, maybe more. I guess maybe. I'm
Well,
not a historian, but maybe the last time
sure.
we can have like I'll say kind of a uh,
I,
classic community kind of feel was maybe the '80s or something like that.
that's
Um,
about
is-
that's about right.
mhm.
So so community has been foundational for humanity since humans became humans. We've relied on community for our well-being and survival forever until around the 1980s. and then and then something started to happen. We started emphasizing the importance of self-reliance and independence. We started using the word freedom in a new way, freedom to be independent and basically not responsible for anybody else, just myself. And then that's when we started moving down the path towards loneliness. Uh, the, the statistics today in the United States are, as you referred to anecdotally, I think are around 75% of the population does not know their next door neighbor. And, and so we've lost this sense of interdependence that we used to have, which is what community means. And also, we've lost our sense of responsibility for each other, which is also what community means. And so, through the Happy Community Builders and Happy Community Project, what we're refocusing on is enabling people to just simply know each other again, and out of knowing each other, develop a sense of belonging. And out of that sense of knowing and belonging, assuming a responsibility for looking out for each other, for caring about each other. One of the things I hear all the time is people long for it, they want that again. And I think COVID taught us how important that really is, that we aren't as independent and self-reliant as we thought we were, that we are actually interdependent upon each other. And so uh, I think there's a strong desire in the world again, at least this is the feedback I continuously get, is for longing for the communities that used to be where people were looking out for each other and we did know our neighbors and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, a lot of places have lost knowing how to create that community again.
Yes, and I think that's I think we see that, almost daily. People, I've had episodes where I talked about how people do not know how to interact with each other anymore.
Yeah,
And that's a variety of things. I think obviously being locked away for 2 years, it's hard to every time I say that, it's hard to believe that we were locked away for 2 years. um
yeah,
you know um so that obviously we have like this global mental health crisis, because as humans we're social creatures. And so
Yep.
that's, contributed to that. But, before the pandemic, as I was mentioning in the introduction, is that there was a loneliness epidemic happening before that. And so
Absolutely.
one of the things that, really drew me to, interviewing you is that, you know, people have forgotten how to be a neighbor. And so I think it's important, even if you can define what is a neighbor to people. They don't even know,
Well,
like they're like,
yeah.
at this beginning. Yeah. Hmm.
Once upon a long time ago, uh, we used to live in a world where the doors weren't locked, and if you needed a cup of sugar, you just wandered into the house next door, and if they weren't home, you let them know that you borrowed a cup of sugar. Uh, uh, we've gone a long ways away from that to the present time, but uh, uh, what we what people are longing for is the ability to actually be able to trust their neighbor. But we've been trained to be afraid of people. I had a sort of a seminal experience in my work when I was early on doing this. This was before COVID. Uh, I would put people in a room, 15 or 20 people in a room, and I did this several times. And I'd say, why don't we just do something really simple? Why don't you just go knock on your neighbor's door and say, "Hi, I'm your neighbor. I'm here if you need any help." And 1 in 4 people would say that they wouldn't do that, that they couldn't do that. And
Hmm.
the reason, I found this strange that they couldn't do that. So I asked them, why can't you do this? And they said, well, I'm not qualified. What do you mean you're not qualified? Well, I haven't taken the course. You need a course on how to be a neighbor, not to knock on somebody's door. But
Hmm.
yeah, I haven't been checked for police and for criminal and sex offenders. And
Hmm.
and if I did knock on their door and something went wrong, they'd sue me and I'd lose my house. Uh, I found that incredibly disappointing because it tells us how afraid we are of each other. Everybody is dangerous in our minds, and it the statistics are that people are no more dangerous today than they were 40 years ago or 50 years ago. But we've learned that we believe that people are dangerous, and so we're afraid to reach out to them. Uh, one of the
Yeah.
sorry.
Mhm. I was just gonna say yes, no, because instantly when you were talking about, I totally was relating to that the trust factor because now everybody just uh, and I don't know if it's because we've all been like watching too many shows of horror and everything like that. But yes, everybody's always thinking the neighbor next door might be a psychopath.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not, right? Very, very unlikely that they are, but but we think that. So one of the things that we're doing to help uh, deal with that is we're creating. People are now stuck on their phones, or everything happens on the screen. So one of the things that we're doing to counter those kind of fears and get people connected with each other again is we've created something called My Good Neighbor app, and it's just being launched now. It's just in the process of being launched. And the idea of the My Good Neighbor app is it's an anti-social social media app. Uh,
Hmm.
and so what we mean by anti-social social media app is that most people want to know that their neighbors are there for them for support and that sort of thing. So you use this app to actually connect with neighbors. You have to go. The only way the app works is if you actually are in close proximity to them. So your phone won't talk to their phone unless you can actually connect, be within 30 feet of them. Otherwise, so it's not about going online and joining another Facebook or something. It's about actually going over to your neighbor and say, "Hey, I'm a good neighbor, and I'd like to help you out if you need help." and I'd like you to be my good neighbor too. Is that okay? And then the two join, and then from there, there's a way of reaching out to each other, saying, there's something going on in my neighborhood, and maybe it's the old tree at the end of the street that's dying, and what should we do about it? And the only way that you can respond to that is the meeting's at my house tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And you can say, I'll be there or not be there, but you can't talk about what you should do about the old tree. You have to actually show up and talk about what you'll do with the old tree. So
Hmm.
so it goes on with other functions that also, like I'm going away on holidays and I need somebody to water my tulips for me. And again, the only way somebody can respond is to either call you or knock on your door and say, hey, I'll take care of your tulips for you. Uh,
I
so
like that.
yeah. So that's one of our ways of trying to rebuild neighborhoods as the way they used to be of neighbors, getting people to actually talk to each other and know each other and count on each other.
I like that. Yeah, taking something that, used to be commonplace and adding, a little touch of technology to it to get people,
Yeah,
I guess, comfortable because that's what they're used to these days. Everything
yeah,
is done through a machine. Um,
exactly.
one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about in this whole thing of understanding what is a neighbor and how to be a neighbor, this is, I think, pushed through media and it's kind of been, I guess you could say, I guess for a lack of better term, I'll call it a trend that the glorification of families and I know there's like two parts of this. Families in some cases have been falling apart, but then there is this kind of a media push of like your family being so. I guess interconnected or so connected that that is your tribe,
Yeah,
right? And there's nothing, and obviously there's nothing inherently wrong about your family being your tribe because they are the people who gave you birth, you grew up with them and things like that. But in doing that, it becomes sort of like this is my personal opinion, but kind of like I'll take it like soccer or football teams, um, and if you are rooting for one team, you know the other team that there is the opponent, and so families become sort of like these teams, and then other families then become opponents, and we have I guess. Lost that connection that okay, yeah, we are maybe the Jones family, and then there's the Williams family, but doesn't mean it's the Jones versus the Williams family.
yeah.
So what are families missing these days in regards to how they are, maybe it's the communication, I guess, within the family or something like that. How,
Well,
what are families missing that they can't connect with another family?
there's quite a lot that's packed into what you just said there, and there's at least two
Hmm.
really big ideas. So first of all, family. Our society is much more mobile than it used to be, and so family are close emotionally, but they're not necessarily close physically. So if you need somebody to run down to the drugstore for you because you're sick and you can't get out, and your children or uncles or whatever they are live on the other side of the country, they're not going to do it for you. Right? So one family, a lot of people, part of the reason for loneliness is because family is not necessarily close by. And the other idea in what you had there is that we have developed competition as being normal in a zero sum game. which means that uh, if you got something, then I didn't get it, and I'm a loser in that. So so we've got this competitive attitude, a competitive style of doing things. It's ingrained in us from when we first start school, at the very least, and maybe even earlier. That there's winners and losers, and winners get stuff and losers lose stuff. But research recently has been there's been quite a lot of research that's happened recently that shows that cooperation gets us all a lot more than competition does, where there is a huge net gain for everybody through cooperation, and that we all become winners through cooperation. Uh, right now, for example, there's a lot of talk about global warming. And there's two ways of approaching that. I'm going to burn up as much gasoline as I possibly can right now, so that I have some sort of advantage. Or we can all ask ourselves, what can we cooperatively do where we all use up less fossil fuels and make our world a better place? Our survival, the survival of humanity, is based on we have to cooperate about this, because if we don't cooperate about this, if it's one country against another country or one community against another community, we're all going to lose. Nobody's going to win. And so that's just a metaphorical example of the power of cooperation. And so communities, healthy communities, bringing this back to a community, healthy communities are where we are cooperative with each other. We look out for each other. I might do a favor for you today, and it doesn't get me any gain whatsoever, other than it gets me a social gain, where I can expect that because I did something good for you today, you or somebody else will do something good for me tomorrow when I need it. And that's that. So I think this idea of competitiveness, which is what you were bringing out, the Joneses versus the Williams, or the Hatfield versus the McCoys, is I think the more classical example of it. Is that it's a concept that's past in time. If we keep competing with each other, we become more divisive. We get the kind of politics that's going on in your country right now. We get the world going down a path of environmental disaster, and we end up shuttering ourselves in our houses alone because we don't want anybody to have an advantage over us. So the best way of doing that is not interact with them except in an aggressive way to see if we can get something from them. And that's just not going to work out very well for anybody.
Yes. And one of the things in kind of, you brought up that cooperation is, essential, not only for us, but for our world. And so one of the things I think that people just have lost or don't understand, because we are in this, I guess you'd say self-focused and competitive nature. There's the reason I think that everybody's going to say, why would I want community? What would you say are the purposes of community?
Well, so this is not me saying it, this is research saying it. We have greater mental health, we have greater physical health, we have greater economic health when we cooperate with each other, when we commune with each other, when we don't see each other as an enemy, but we see each other, or a threat, but we see each other as an ally. And so the benefit is that we're happier, we're healthier, and we're economically better off, generally speaking, if if we cooperate with each other in community, if we actually look for opportunities to help each other, if we don't see each other as a competitor but as an ally, as somebody trustworthy rather than someone to be afraid of. Now, not everybody is going to be trustworthy, but if you live in a neighborhood and everybody knows everybody in the neighborhood, it becomes pretty clear who's not the trustworthy person pretty soon. It becomes common knowledge. And okay, well, you treat an untrustworthy person as untrustworthy, but generally speaking, that will be a very small percentage of the neighborhood, and and so you'll be able to learn to trust so many other people around you. One of the biggest things that we deal with is fearfulness. We're afraid. We want security. We want safety. Well, the best way to have safety is to know who's around you and who you can trust and who you can't trust. And you can't do that by assuming that everybody is untrustworthy. You have to actually know them, get to know them.
So simple but true, but that's that's true. How do you know if you can trust if you don't know them?
Exactly.
Yes. Um, One of the biggest things, of course, to think about this is, the young people who are growing up now. I would say, probably maybe the teenagers and a little bit younger. How all of this experiences that they're seeing. We went through a pandemic. We have in the U.S. Mass polarization, and I guess now global polarization around
Yeah.
different issues. What do we need to worry about for future generations? They're seeing all of this. They're living in a world of conflict and chaos.
Well, I my simple way of getting out of all of that is to reestablish community around myself. And if we all do that, if we all reestablish community, learn how to be community orientated, if we take responsibility for the well-being of what goes on around us, rather than leave it up to they should do something about that, then I think we can all feel a little safer. We can feel a little more comfortable with each other, and we can feel that there's greater hope in the world because we'll be in much more positive experiences than we will be in the negative experiences. The news is never going to change. The news is always going to be negative. But we can have positive experiences around us all the time. And wouldn't it be great if we couldn't have positive experiences with the people who live closest to us, our neighbors?
Hmm. Yes, definitely. Now to transition a little bit and talk about your two organizations, Happy Community Project and Happy Community Builders.
Yeah.
I wanted to dive into how you have started to create a solution to this lack of community that we are seeing globally. And I guess let's start at the beginning. Let's tell me about Happy Community Project and Happy Community Builders. How did you come up with this idea and how did you start?
Well, it started with me reflecting on my grandchildren's future. That was about 11 years ago now. And I was looking out into their future and seeing a picture, and I decided I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to mitigate that outcome the best that I possibly could. And where that led me is to community, community being the foundation of our humanity's well-being. We've depended on community forever for our well-being. And me noticing that community was going in the opposite direction of breaking up and people becoming isolated and separate from each other. uh, that became the focus of what I wanted to do. So my background as a career person was that I was a business coach for executives and entrepreneurs, and often that led me into cultural change. And what I know is that story drives behavior. We live by the stories that we have. So you, Anne Marie, and myself, we each have our own personal story, and we live by those stories. They guide our behavior. If we look at what we do, we can see that it's consistent, for the most part, with the story that we have about ourselves. And the same is true about community. What I've learned is that communities have a story, and if I talk to uh, half a dozen or a dozen people in a community, there will be a common thread that they come up with. And they'll say, we're so divisive that all we do is fight about things, or they'll say that uh, uh, it's such a wonderful place. We know everybody, and what a great place to live. Whatever the story is, they'll live by it. And so, for the communities that are struggling to be communities, what we learned how to do is to shift the community story. That's what we call Happy Community Project. We've learned that we can actually take people through an 18-month process, a community through an 18-month process, where the community citizens themselves give themselves new experiences, and through those new experiences come up with a different story, a story that is in the direction of, isn't it great to know each other around here? And we accept all the people who are in our community, including the people who are different than what we would normally think of ourselves as, and that we look out for each other, we care about each other. So that becomes part of their story, and then that changes, that's how they behave. And so then they become a much more robust community. And in the process, what we've learned is that they also become economically more prosperous as a community, as well as just having a greater sense of well-being. So that's one of the things we do. That's called Happy Community Project. And Happy Community Builders takes a little different tact than that. Happy Community Builders is about, the world is filled with people who are trying to make communities better. Sometimes they're called community developers, sometimes they're called change makers, sometimes they're called community builders, sometimes they're just called personal. I have a project that I want to do in the community, but they're all doing the same sort of work. They're trying to make their community a better place to live. And what we've found through experience is that many of these people feel that they're living in a silo, that they're doing this really hard work, but they're being unappreciated, and it's a forever job that never goes away, and that they're doing it with a sense of aloneness. And so what we've done is we've created a platform called Happy Community Builders, and on that platform, the community builders get to provide peer-to-peer support for each other. They put on workshops. We have a workshop pretty much every week that they bring a lot of expertise, these Happy Community Builders. They bring a lot of experience and expertise from a lot of different perspectives, and they share that with each other through workshops. They form groups to work on special projects. They engage themselves in conversations. We hold at least one monthly conversation where anybody can join on it, called Coffee Connections. And when someone's struggling with something, they put a call out, and if there isn't an actual real solution to it, at least they get the moral support from people who know what they're going through. So that's called Happy Community Builders. So those are the two ways that we're working at trying to enable people to build more connected and belonging and caring communities.
Now, how do people find out about you? Do they just find you online? Is it something that you do an outreach? Because
Sure.
obviously in the world there's tons of communities. How do
Yeah.
people start working with you?
Well, if they're a community builder, the easiest place to start is to go to happycommunitybuilders.com. If and so community builder can be a lay person, an ordinary citizen, or it can be a professional whose career it is. They both are there. So it's happycommunitybuilders.com. If it's someone who wants to do something specific in their community and change how their community functions, then that's Happy Community Project. So it's happycommunityproject.com.
Now, as I was reading up and preparing for this interview, I realized that you had a global reach in changing communities. That you've even worked
Yes.
with communities in India and made a remarkable difference. So I'm sure from there you have a maybe a best story about a community that you saw the most dramatic change, or touched your heart, or something of that sort. Can you tell us about your favorite story or best story?
Sure. So yes, we've had experience. Well, just the other day we were having a conversation amongst community builders, and there was a fellow from England, and the rest of the people were spread across Canada. We didn't have somebody from the United States, but we often do in those conversations, but on that particular one. But what the guy from England said was that, I just learned something here. I just learned that it doesn't matter where the community is in the world, we're all dealing with the same issues. We're all dealing with the same problems, and we're all working at trying to make our communities the same kind of communities that are connected, belonging, and caring. So that to me was a big success. Another story might be one that comes from close to my own home. It's called Windsor, Nova Scotia. And Windsor had a community story that was the divisive story. We're so divisive here. This is how the story went. We're so divisive here. We always just fight about everything. If there's a good idea about it that comes up, we'll just fight about it until it dies. Nothing ever happens here. And they made that story true. They fought about everything, and nothing ever happened in Windsor, Nova Scotia. Uh, so we brought the Happy Community Project to them, and the community citizens rallied around this idea. And about a year later, the story started changing, and it started changing to, what a great community. There's so much happening here, and look at how we look out for each other. Look at how we care for each other, and then they'd come up with some example of somebody who would never have been cared for in the past was now being cared for. And so it speaks to how dramatic the transformation can actually really be in a community from one kind to another kind.
You bring up
So
an important point as you were saying that, of when you started in that community, they had kind of a negative outlook on everything, and then once they started having a more positive and saying positive things, it transformed or blossomed into somewhere that everybody was, proud to be a part of and live, and so that leads me to ask about what the keys are to creating a community, because obviously, one of the things is that, you have to believe, I guess, that you can change your community and, change your mentality, as you have just mentioned with this example.
yeah, so yes, you you have to believe it's possible, and the first step is creating a sense of possibility for the community. That it's, as challenging and as daunting as it might be, and how historically entrenched the attitudes seem to be, you want to create a sense that this doesn't have to be this way in the future, that it is possible. And then, but that story isn't good enough in its own right. Possibility is it creates hope and may create some energy for people to do things, but it doesn't necessarily make the change itself. So what then has well the way sorry the way that we I describe it is it's like building an onion from the inside out. So you've heard of peeling the onion to get the core essence. Well, this metaphor goes the other way. You start with an onion seed and you build an onion from the inside out. And so you start with little things where people can start having an experience that's different than what they used to have, and then that then starts attracting more people to it. So the onion gets a little bit bigger, and you keep giving them more and different experiences. One experience isn't enough, but you give them continuous, ongoing, and multiple experiences. And when that starts happening, they start changing their belief system, where this story comes from, and then with that process, they also start changing the story. So it's a little bit about creating hope. It's a little bit about getting a core group of people to lead it. It's a little bit about those core group of people creating experiences for people, other people, and building on those experiences so that those experiences are constantly growing and constantly being not just one project, but multiple projects that are giving multiple kinds of different experiences. And through that, then the people just start, through their experience, say, hey, that old story doesn't fit anymore. We got a new story now.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah,
how we
that's
do it anyway.
I guess since there are so many communities in the world that are in turmoil right now for various reasons and at different levels, and maybe it was a great community, but because they haven't seen each other in a while, the things that
Yeah,
they used to do, fell away, or there's
yeah.
nobody to bring them back. What would you say is the one thing that everyone in any community can start implementing to start building community again?
Ah, well, I think appreciation would be a good step, and reaching out to strangers. So there's that's two things, it's not one thing. Uh, so the people who are actually trying to do something to make the community better often get uh, uh, two pieces of feedback that is very discouraging for them. One is, you're doing it wrong. Why are you doing that? You're wasting your time. That's sort of negative feedback. And the other is, well, you should. I'm going to stay over here and not do anything, but I'm going to tell you, you should be doing something different than what you're doing. And meanwhile, they're working their heart out, putting a great deal of effort in, and somebody's piling something else on them that they should do, and well, they're not taking personal any responsibility for it. So one is, I think, just go out and appreciate the people who are trying to do something. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for trying to make our community a better place. That would be one. The other one is start bringing people together. Reach out to your neighbor and say, hi, I live next door to you, and this is who I am. Who are you? Right? And bring neighborhoods together. Start having a street party for the neighborhood. It can be in my backyard, or we can block off the street and have it on the street. Whatever works in your neighborhood. But do something simple, similar to that. I said street. It may not be street because a lot of people live in apartment buildings. So hey, we're having a party for our apartment floor. I go around, knock on all the doors, and invite them over for a party in the hallway. It doesn't even have to be inside the apartment, right? Have an apartment floor party. Uh, those would be things that would get things started as relatively simple things to do.
Yeah, so reach out and touch someone, essentially. That, yes, as I used
Yeah,
to say.
I mean, you can't
I guess you
community
can't touch them, but maybe these
exactly.
days, but yes,
Yeah,
but reach
exactly.
out. Mhm.
Community, is common, in common, commune with each other, right? Well, do that, right?
Yes. Yes, and so I have 2 more questions for you. So in starting Community Happy Project and community, builders, what has been the biggest lessons that you have learned? You can just give me 1 or 2.
Ah, well, the biggest lesson is how much people are longing for a sense of community. Almost everybody wants more sense of community than what they have. Uh, they simply don't know how to do it. They don't know how to go about it. And so that's I think, probably the biggest lesson is that, and and there's another big lesson. People want to do something about it. Not only do they want the community, but they want to do something about it. So I gave you the example of Windsor, Nova Scotia. Windsor is a small community of 12,000 people. It's not a big, huge metropolitan place. 700 people in that 18-month period volunteered their time to come forward and help make their community a happier community. People wanted to do that. They wanted to contribute to making the community a happier place. And it only took a little bit of leadership to show them what they could be doing to make that happen. So people want a happier community, and they want themselves to do something about it. They just don't know how or what. So you give them a wow and a how and a what, and they'll show up. Those are
Now,
the
my
those are the two. I mean, we keep hearing that there's no volunteers anymore. We keep hearing that over and over again. The young people don't volunteer. Nobody's volunteer. Just the old people are tired and getting out of the volunteering thing, and everybody else is too busy. That's what we keep hearing over and over again. But my personal experience is that's not true. You just have to give them a really good reason and show them how. And the good reason is we're going to build a community here. We're going to build a place where people care about each other. They want that, and they'll help you do that.
Yes, definitely. I think there is um, a super hunger, just not even here, but just around the world for connection and to belong. I would say, I guess I would say, to sum up. I guess one of the key lessons of 2020 is belonging is important. as 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 we see it, I think that's when it comes down to the core of all the things that we're seeing kind of spill over, what I'm calling the after effects of everything that is unfolded from the social unrest. Is you saw people out there in the streets of various countries protesting for this and that,
Yeah.
for obviously economics. Everything is that there's this sense of I want to have my place. Is
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, and that's, I would sum it up. That's why everybody, the what we're facing is a crisis, that people don't feel like they have I guess a place in the world, and they realize that after being locked up to think about it. Yes.
Absolutely. And there's research on gangs. Some parts of the United States have gangs, and we do here in Canada as well. And the research on gangs. Why do the young people join gangs? Just to belong. They need a place to belong. It's fundamental to humans that we need a place to belong. And what greater place to belong than with the people who we live around, right?
Yes. Yes. And well, the answer is so simple, but we make it so complex.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so, to wrap things up, what would you say is your big dream for your organization?
Uh, so my big dream is that we can contribute. Actually, here. I was going to say one thing, but I'm going to say this instead. That part of the reasons why communities struggle these days is we're all part of a bigger story, and that bigger story is economic growth is the only thing that really matters. If we have enough economic growth, we'll be able to solve all of our problems. Except that we know that's not true because we've been living under that promise for 100 years and it hasn't happened yet. So my big dream is that we change our story that we live under as a community, as a state, as a nation, to one where we we are a community and we are there to support each other, and economy is there to support us as a community. If you could imagine for a moment that your politicians, your bureaucrats, your business people, and your fellow citizens all had a sense of responsibility for the well-being of community, how many problems would we have? Would we have the divisiveness? Would we have the poverty? Would we have the environmental problems that we have? Would we, would we have homelessness? Would we have these problems that are so huge in our society these days that we never seem to be able to solve? Would they be as immense if we all put community as the number one agenda for everything that we do, and everything else was there to support it, including economy, rather than community is a resource to be used to make more economy.
Yes. I think
Right?
that's definitely if we saw ourselves as as a community and community being connected to each
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
and and wanting to work for the betterment of each other, then we could probably have solved almost all of our problems.
Exactly. So
Yes.
that's my really big dream for all,
Mhm.
not just for Happy Community Project and Happy Community Builders, but for my grandchildren and all the other grandchildren of the world, is that we can get to a way of thinking like that. So that, and so my dream for Happy Community Project and Happy Community Builders is we become part of the agency that helps shift that conversation to where community is more important than economic growth.
Yes, I think that's fantastic because I think obviously if we have community growth and it all kind of it works together, then you'll probably have economic growth because it motivates people because they're looking to look out for the other person's good and not just themselves. So thank you so much for that insight. So thank you, Mr. Vaughn, for your time and insight. To learn more about Barry Vaughn, go to happycommunitiesbuilders.com. If you have a passion for an unserved community, a social justice problem, or want to change minds, contact Project Good Work at projectgood.org to start your project of change today. We'd like to send our deepest gratitude to our ongoing show supporter, Blair Chapman. Subscribe to our mailing list at projectgood.org/subscribe to get our episodes and blog articles sent to you each month. Plus, get a 10% discount on any project you start on projectgood.org. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Project Good, where we're focused on what matters.